The Festival of the Lost is in full swing and has brought some pretty spooky stories and enemies along with it. Today we're going to recap the lore on the Headless Ones, what happened in these lost sectors, and how Glint was allowed to go in search of these epic tales in the first place. So the story of this festival begins with Glint and Crow. This comes from one of the new exotic sparrows you can earn throughout the event. So Crow is on board a Cabal ship waiting to meet with Keitel, and Glint says that Crow really doesn't need him at the moment, so he wants to go out and explore. So I was thinking, Glint continued, that as long as you're safe, I could take some time to do a little research for my collection of tall tales and legends. You mean your stories about the cult of pumpkin men? They're called Headless Ones, Glint chirped back. And then with increasing urgency, there have been credible reports for centuries all over Seoul detailing very similar phenomena. Without any clear cause or link, Crow held up his hand. The Headless Ones, he said abruptly, cutting into Glint's analysis. Glint backed away slightly and nodded. You're not going alone, are you? Crow asked. No, the Guardian said they'd go with me. Crow contemplated for what felt like a very long time to both of them. When he finally spoke, his voice was small and low. Just promise me one thing. Anything. When the shooting starts, remember to keep your head. Glint's groan echoed throughout the halls of the battleship. It was a groan of adventure. Now, as we know, there are 3 haunted lost sectors, and each of them tell their own story. The brief summaries of these tales can be sort of pieced together by Glint's dialogue if you just play the missions, but the 27-page lore book also helps a lot and throws in a lot of tidbits you'll definitely miss by just playing the levels. Now, if it's not already, I'll soon have a video up on the channel which is an audiobook of this entire lore book, reading all 26 or 27 entries, and you'll definitely want to check it out if you want to see some of those smaller stories, like what's up with Eris, Mithrax, Glint meeting Failsafe, Atekian, and a bunch of others, and it's just a really good lore book. Our first story comes from the K1 Haunted Lost Sector. So we know that scientists on the moon studied the K1 artifact in the K1 project, and many of them went insane because this had to do with the darkness. Listening to darkness broadcasts made their minds go crazy, and that's definitely a perfect place to set up a haunted lost sector. In this tale though, miners and a doctor on the moon began having weird visions and sleep paralysis of a headless creature that reminded them of themselves. The doctor describes that the creature wanted his head, and then the broadcasts end. The hallucinations have become persistent. My headless friend now appears during the daytime. I see him out of the corner of my eye, but when I turn my head, he disappears. I've also started losing time. I will blink and suddenly I'm in a strange location several hours later. I'm not sure if it's short-term memory loss or a fugue state. Yesterday, I woke up in the equipment locker, standing in front of the plasma cutters. Several were already missing. The shadow was standing right next to me. I think I know what he wants.
I appreciate your company on this lore-finding mission, Guardian. The more data we collect, the better. There's lots of stories from the Golden Age about the miners who went missing here. Some say they turned into terrible headless monsters. Those poor miners couldn't sleep, and they suffered from terrible hallucinations. Eva says they turned on each other, and something transformed their bodies into headless ones. I know you can't resist a fresh summoning circle.
On Europa, we have some weird moments. Several exos from Mars made their way to Europa to see what all the fuss was about. They believed they were possibly being led by the Warmind for a secret mission. When they arrived though, they started deconstructing themselves piece by piece until nothing was left. In this sector, Glint explains that the Vex created the Headless Ones with the Exos. Mortimus III looked so content lying on the conveyor belt, like he was getting the best sleep of his life. I envied him. Once the conveyor belt started, the Maker's spindly pneumatic arms came to life. They descended on Mortimus, darting in and out of his joints, dismantling him piece by piece. It started with his hands and feet and worked its way inward, unmaking him from a whole into a million tiny components. There was a moment after all of his limbs and torso had been stripped away and he was just a head with a long jumble of neural connectors streaming out of his neck like a robotic jellyfish when his eyes opened. He looked at me, mouth gaping like he was trying to tell me something, and then his eyes went dark. It's my turn next.
Some legends say that the exos lost in this sector were sent by Rasputin on a secret mission. Whatever they were searching for, they found the Vex instead. When the exos arrived, the Vex hacked their minds and drove them to madness. Like a certain faction head who shall remain nameless, the exos were killed and their bodies transformed into Headless Ones.
And lastly, the story from Nessus. Researchers were first sent in to investigate a cavern next to the Exodus Black crash site. After skirmishes with the Fallen, the rescue crew sent in to investigate found bodies with no heads and gunshot wounds. 732. Forward assault team has secured the area. Small arms fire is ongoing. We've located 3 human bodies, each with multiple gunshot wounds. Their heads have been removed. 755. Evidence that at least one more human body was scattered by explosives. No sign of the team's weapons, ghosts, or heads. 836. Extraction initiated. Site remains under Fallen control. Bringing back what remains we can. Traveler help us all. Failsafe also mentions that she has neighbors, which are these Headless Ones, and that they were caused by Nokris. That he collected these heads and used the human consciousness to create these monsters, the Headless Ones. Here's also a line from that lore book where a Techian describes the Glint, more evidence of Nokris' connection. The early hive experiments were done in secret under the guidance of a powerful wizard whose name we'll not mention here. Nokris, Glint offered. Yes, Elea grimaced. The unmentionable wizard created many abominations, using deceased and living subjects, including your unfortunate moon miners. She steepled her fingers. It's possible that access to these powerful pumpkins were a boon to his research. You asked why they never visit me, not the nature of their existence. Those are 2 different questions, Failsafe said. But come again, the AI continued, and I'll tell you everything you want to know about the hive necromancer who ripped the concept of the Headless Ones from the human subconsciousness. But only if I come back to visit, right? That's right, said Failsafe smugly. I hear that's called incentive. So that's pretty cool. We hear those 3 stories from the lost sectors, and it appears that Nokris may have more to do with this behind the scenes. Now these could just be nothing but spooky stories to tell during the Festival of the Lost, but regardless I wanted to bring them to you anyway. Again, if you'd like to see the full 27-minute audiobook lore reading, that'll be up on the channel. Also, if you're into more spooky Festival of the Lost goodness, that'll be unfolding over the various weeks, and I thank you very much for watching. Anyway, my name's Evade, and I'll catch you Guardians in the next one.